All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's Moneyline with Nancy. At the beginning of the show, I did tell you that I'll be looking at the survey, the 2017 manufacturing survey that was conducted by NOI Polls and CSEA. Joining me right now, my guests, two gentlemen, one to my right, one to my left. The one to my immediate left is Dr. Bell Ihua, who is the Chief Executive Officer at NOI Polls. Dr. Ihua, good to see you. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well. Thanks, Nancy. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Welcome to the show. All right. Eke Ubiji is the Executive Secretary at NASME. Of course, NASME is the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. So if you're an SME in Nigeria, you should be in that association, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
How are you doing?
Yeah, okay. We're surviving.
Oh, that response tells me everything. Perhaps we should just end the show and go. We should just end the show. It's a wrap, everybody. We are okay. You know, we are surviving. Let's just end the show and go, isn't it?
No.
All right. All right, welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ihua, I will start with you. This is the Manufacturing Sector Survey 2017 survey report done by SCEA and your organization. I've read the summary. You brought me, of course, the infographics and all of that. Why this survey? Why?
Okay, thanks, Nancy. It's always good to be here. This is the 2017 Manufacturing Sector Survey conducted by NOI Polls and CC. CC stands for the Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa. They are partners on this particular project. And this is the second in the series. So last year, 2016, we came out with a manufacturing sector survey, and we thought that should be updated this year. There were issues that we didn't cover last year that we had to cover this year. So first of all, in terms of the scope of the assignment, last year we only sampled about 205 manufacturing companies. But this year we sort of expanded our scope to interview 496 manufacturing companies. So the detail, the findings we're presenting here today are findings from manufacturers across the country in 12 states, covering the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, from what manufacturers are facing as we speak. And this survey was conducted between the months of February and May of 2017.
So, because I had the Statistician General here on the show last Thursday, that's Dr. Yemi Kale, and of course we talked about Nigeria's emergence out of recession and all of that, and it was noted that, of course, the manufacturing sector is one of the sectors that was looked at and picking up a bit because perhaps foreign exchange liquidity now being made across to them. But as someone that relates with SMEs or MSMEs, as it were, tell me if what Dr. Ihua and his organization, as well as CC, conducted is in tandem with what you're facing.
Absolutely, Nancy. In practice, or in practical terms, their findings confirms what the situation is currently. If you look at the report, there are major key findings. The first one is on the issue of access to foreign exchange. You know what the situation has been, even though the CBN have tried to bring in some palliatives, but still, it's still a major problem, though not as it were when it started. So it's still a big problem. And when we say it's a big problem, especially with regards to our members who are into manufacturing, if I tell you this particular case made a lot of them to close shop. When we say SMEs, they are not the same as the big players like the Dangotes, Nigerian breweries, and so on and so forth. Some of them, before they can even source the forex, you know what it takes them? You understand? That before you know it, time is going. The next thing is they close shop and sack their staff. So that's the reality of the situation. Like what to say that is, as Nigeria has said. Yeah, I think Dr. Yemekale tried to be... He was very cautious when he was saying Nigeria is out of recession. I watched him. He wasn't... He said, look, okay, we made some effort, but we are not out of the woods. I'm using this word. We are not... so you know the meaning of that. If a core professional like him can say that, we still have a long way to go. And they said 0.55 is either way. If you swing to the left, you are back to where you are coming from. If you swing to the left, you are moving up a little. So that's exactly the picture. Then there are other key findings. We are talking of access to credit. It's also a big problem to a lot of SMEs.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that. Let me just quickly take Dr. Ihua on some of, just like the findings, because like I reeled out at the beginning of the program, some of the challenges, bad roads and all of that. So can you run me through some of these challenges? And of course, what your findings were in terms of will I say the consistency, yes, the respondents you spoke to, what were the major challenges?
Okay, to sort of summarize the key findings from this survey. The survey showed that 74% of Nigerian manufacturers say that the business environment is unsupportive. That's as simple as it can get. And this number is an increase from last year, a 14-point increase. So last year, we had only about 60% of manufacturers saying that the business environment was unfriendly and all of that. But this year, 74%, so 14 points up. That tells you that compared to a year ago, manufacturers are feeling the heat now more than last year, with only about 22% saying that the business environment is supportive and 6% say no, it's neither here nor there. But I mean, 74% is a huge, and the reasons are not far-fetched. So as you said, foreign exchange is a major one. So CBN says between February and now, about $9.96 billion have been injected into the. So yes, and in fairness to CBN, that has made some progress, but we're not yet there. So a manufacturer tells me we used to buy raw materials, and of course, when you look at the fact that the dependence, so from this survey, about 48% of the overall manufacturing businesses say they depend on foreign inputs overall. Now, by the time you begin to look at medium to large organizations, you see a spike of up to 60% plus relying on foreign inputs. So that tells you that with foreign exchange hitting 260 something now, 250, 265, thereabout, is still a difficult time for manufacturers compared to when it was 180, 190, 200.
At the time, it was 150.
Exactly. So it's still a huge issue for them. But then, that aside, there's also the issue of policy inconsistency. There's also the issue of power supply, poor power supply. There's also the issue of, access to credit. But I think this year, particularly what came out is this issue of bad roads. We cannot, overemphasize the impact of roads. So getting raw materials from the ports or from locations into the factories and getting out finished products from the factories to the market is a major issue.
Did they specify like the roads? Because you just said something now, the port. The port has been one major hiccup that we seem not to have fixed. I know government has been doing quite a lot. Even right now, we're having 24-hour operations at the port and all of that. Though some people say, and all of that. But the roads, are there roads that were specified?
Yes. I mean, Nancy, we did ask them, what roads are your greatest headaches? So yes, first of all, I think that Apapa-Tinkan access road to the port is a major issue. Then you talk about the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, which, if you will, it's like the lifeblood of economic activities of this country, moving from the north to the south. That road stands in a very pivotal position to the economic activities. So you have Oyo-Ogbomoso Road, you have the Bini-Ore
Road,
Bini-Auchi, Bini-Agbo, those roads. Then, of course, coming from the north central, you have the Makurdi-Otukpo-Enugu Road. You also have the Obajana Nsukka Road.
Yeah.
These roads, which serve as life wire. You also have the east-west road. Let's not forget the east-west road in the south-south. And of course the Aba-Port Harcourt Express Road. So these roads are limiting the ability of manufacturers to be able to move goods from the ports to their factories and to be able to move out. And of course this is affecting our business operations.
Is it that all the things that government is doing wasn't even recognized in this report? Because as it were, the government have been doing, a few things in terms of perhaps rehabilitating some of those roads, in terms of perhaps making life or ease of doing business better. Let me say that. Is it that people did not take cognizance of it? That is your constituency.
Yeah, my constituency, in the area of ease of doing business, there are some impacts. Like, for example, registration of businesses. A lot have been done with regards to what the CAC, Corporate Affairs Commission, is doing. Instead of before, somebody will spend months doing that, you can just go to one of their offices and do your business registration. Even the time frame has also reduced. We must give commendation to government in that regard. Now, on the issue of access to finance, yes, the CBN, let me give one example. The 220 billion MSME Development Fund, which the CBN released quite some time now. There are many avenues through which you can access that.
That's the 160% is meant for women.
No, the 160, absolutely.
Yes,
correct.
I like that part.
Because you're a woman. Yeah, that's very correct.
Yeah.
That fund is gender sensitive. Good. But as at the time it was released, how many women could access funds following the old process and procedures?
Okay, Mr. Ubiji, I'll hold you right now. Let's quickly take a break. Let's take a commercial break. And when we come back, of course, we'll be looking at the manufacturing sector survey conducted by NOI Polls, and CC will do just that when we return. Do join us again.
It's been a great year for agribusiness. With our weather and the amazing range of soil available to us, the fallow lands are birthing their magnificent potential. The Central Bank of Nigeria, under President Buhari's administration, is spearheading this progress, and everyone is getting in on it. The local farmer on the Anchor Borrowers Program and the international investors, taking advantage of the new policies geared towards easy foreign investment, stabilized exchange rate, and FX market. The harvest is green and lush, and we are just getting started. Come, invest in Nigeria. Discover what the green in our flag really stands for. Nigeria, ready for business. An initiative of Greenfield Assets Limited.
That's commendable.
All right, back. Dr.Bell Ihua, the Chief Executive at NOI Polls, as well as Eke Ubiji, the Executive Secretary, has asked me, still with me. You were talking about, we're talking about the funds earlier on before we went on that commercial break. So sure. I'll allow you to land before I come to Dr. Ihua.
Okay. Yeah, the 220 billion for that fund is specifically mentioned. Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Fund, 220 billion, 60% for women. Now, the issue, that's a very good initiative. The CBN, the government should be commended for that. But the issue is the accessibility. You understand? That is accessibility. The SMEs cannot go to CBN and collect the money. It's not done that way. There are avenues, channels through which it's disbursed. They use DFIs, that's the Development Finance Institutions like the Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, and so on and so forth. Those ones, their interest rate is quite reasonable, single digit. BOI is doing fantastically well in that area, and BOA. The issue is with commercial banks. If you recollect very well, when that thing started, a lot of the banks were very reluctant. They were hesitant to participate in the process because the CBN was very strict about it. So don't exceed so interest rate percentage. They were reluctant. The CBN had to interface with them again. But still, it's still not so easy for a lot of SMEs to access this fund.
That's why we have limited access to credit as one of the challenges.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let me come to Dr. Ihua, because looking at the report here, all the manufacturing companies interviewed affirmed that the recession had impacted their business operations and profitability, 70% stating that the recession had impacted their businesses negatively. Would you want to highlight more?
Yes, I mean, this was one major finding that came out of the survey, especially the fact that the recession had weakened the disposable income, so it had weakened demand. So you know, it was like a double whammy negative effect on manufacturers. On one hand, they were struggling to get foreign exchange to buy inputs. So before they were buying 180, 190, now they are buying 360, almost 400 at the time we even conducted this survey. Yet, they are not allowed to pass on that burden to the consumers, because if they do, consumers will go for alternative products.
Sure.
Of course, there are cheaper
And
products coming from
imported
China
products, yes.
and places. So
Yeah.
they're in the middle of that.
Wow.
But then, the inflation has also weakened demand, because when you have inflation, consumers will look for cheaper alternatives.
Sure.
The loyalty is not there. Consumers will look for what will best suit us. So on one hand, manufacturers are facing this challenge. On the other hand, the sales are not there. So even you even look at the numbers, manufacturers say we're struggling. What does that lead manufacturers to do then? They'll have to lay off staff. They'll have to ask some people to go home. Some are closing shop. And because of that, we have a situation where unemployment is increasing as a result of that, and poverty level is also going up because they have to ask some people to go back home.
Now, with the state of manufacturing in Nigeria and with all these challenges, have we even started at all in terms of reviving the sector? Like I said earlier on, I know there are pockets of things that the government is doing, but with the way it is right now, manufacturers are not having it easy. Like you said, importation, and which I see here that almost half of the companies interviewed, about 48%, considered importation of raw materials critical to their production. And of course, substitution too, because if a Nigerian product, for example, is going for 100 naira as a result of the factors of production as a manufacturer put there, and you see an imported product either from China or from India or one of these places going for 60 naira, I'll take the 60 naira and forget the Nigerian-made 100 naira product.
Sure.
So, with all this, are we good to go yet? Are we on track?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things that I've been missing all along on this to help or encourage manufacturing in Nigeria is the issue of procurement. You know, bulk of government procurement in the past, they were not focusing on locally manufactured goods. Not until the manufacturers drummed it into the ears of the government. It's one of the things that came out in one of the last executive orders the then acting president released, which is quite encouraging. Very good. Now, with regards to our members, I can tell you we've received correspondence from the government asking us to give names of our members who are into manufacturing of certain products, so that...
What kind of products I would like to know?
If I can remember, some of them are...
Textile
material,
okay.
Textiles, yeah.
Leathers.
Textiles, yeah, leathers and so on and so forth. You are very correct. There are some of them, about 11 items.
You know why? And I'm excited about the textile because I've always said that there's a difference. I think I said it on the program last week, and my crew after the show was like, oh, they really didn't think of it that way. I said there's a difference between made in Nigeria and sold in Nigeria,
Sure.
for example.
Yeah.
So if you're telling us now to wear Ankara and made in, find out, investigate if that Ankara was made here
That's right.
and not brought from Ghana
Holland.
and sold here.
Yeah.
Is it because I'm putting on Ankara, you know,
I'm
like
from
I'm
Holland,
looking
then, you
African
know.
and traditional? Who says it's traditional? You know?
Correct.
So my team was like, oh, they didn't think of it that way, you know. So I'm particularly impressed if government will say, fine, let's talk about the textile companies because there are a whole lot of them.
Even pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
you know, name them.
You know, so,
You know.
all right.
So that's quite encouraging. That's quite encouraging in that regard. And what we are now doing is to ginger our members around the country who are into those products. Say, please give us your name, your address, what you produce, your capacity to even produce that product. You understand? Then we send it to the authorities.
Okay, Dr. Ihua, we've talked about foreign exchange rates. We've also looked at bad roads. I'm seeing here unavailability of petrol and diesel. Where is that coming from?
Well,
47% at least. We've been seeing, we've not had costs not to enter fuel stations in the last, at least since this year began. I've been buying fuel and all that to power my generator and all of that.
Now see, energy cost alone takes up
A whole
over
lot.
30% of the expenses of manufacturers. So on one hand, if you want to go into serious manufacturing, you can't rely on PHCN. You have to make alternative provision for your energy.
Yeah.
Now, if PHCN, as you also see is mentioned here, is down, then you have to resort to buying fuel. And if you cannot readily get this when you need it, then it's a problem. In fairness,
fuel and diesel.
Yes, in fairness, diesel. Yes, in fairness to Ministry of Petroleum Resources, this number actually came down from last year.
Okay.
Last year,
Survey.
last year it was really at a critical point, but this year it's come down slightly. But it does not mean that it's totally been taken out. I think the narrative should be, what sort of bailout should we give to the manufacturing sector? In addition to the bailout given to state government to sort out salaries, to sort out pensions, what bailout can we give to the manufacturing sector to make sure that the sector is playing its role? The sector, typically in economics, you move from an agrarian-based economy to the manufacturing economy before you get to a service economy. But now we have a
service.
Yes. You have a situation where we've jumped from the agrarian into service.
Service.
The manufacturing, we should be the industrial base. We should create the job for the teeming population. We should be able to be the hub of production of the country. Is weak, and that's the point where we really need these bailouts, especially to the MSMEs, as Ms. Ubiji says.
Even at 47% is still high.
Yes.
It's still very high. That means a lot of people, a lot of manufacturers are spending more money powering their generators.
Sure.
I discussed power yesterday on the show, and I try as much as possible to put some kind of perspective into why that sector is still plagued after so many years of investing of billions of dollars in that sector, yet nothing is working, because power is indeed needed for the industrialization of the country.
Absolutely.
All right, let's unstable power supply. That's also related to what we're looking at.
Sure.
Weak demand. You talked about inflation earlier on. Now that inflation is even easing, can we see Nigerians don't have disposable income as much as they have?
The issue of weak demand is a major issue. So you have manufacturers who, produce. One of those manufacturers said to me, to be involved in manufacturing in Nigeria, you must be a sadist. I said, how do you mean? He said, you must be somebody who has chosen to suffer. If you can make a trip to China, just give them the prototype, and ask them to manufacture, and they manufacture for you at probably 10% of the whole amount that it will cost you to manufacture. You shouldn't be. It's a no-brainer. You should get the Chinese guys to manufacture for you.
Bring it here.
So, if you are into manufacturing, it's just that you have the love for this country, you have the loyalty for this country to want to remain in business. Yes. So, when you look at that from that perspective, you realize that these manufacturers, I was in Bauchi, for example. I personally interviewed the chief executive officer of Arlind. Arlind are into wire. Arlind wire is one of the best in the country. But the CEO told me, he said, we are struggling. We only switch on our gen for 2 hours. There's no power most of the time. Whatever we get, we'll just do a little work for 2 hours. So you see people sitting idle. This is productive capacity unutilized. And that's why the data talks about 85% of manufacturing companies not operating up to 75%. We shouldn't even talk about 100%, because if you say 100% is a wild good chase, about 96% do not operate up to 100%. But if we bring that down a bit to 75%, at least 85% of the companies are not operating up to 75% of the capacity. We have cases of what should take you 1 day or 2 days maximum to bring a good from the port or raw materials from the port to your factory can take you a week. In some cases, it can take you 2 weeks. That's lost man-hours, lost productive hours. Where does all that go into?
So you can imagine why we still have that staggering unemployment numbers,
Absolutely.
poverty, and all of that. Because if we can move this sector forward, perhaps a lot of people would be out of the job market. Now, what are the recommendations for government? Because as we've highlighted all the challenges, it's not just about reaction, these are our problems, these are our problems, but what are the solutions? What should government do? What do manufacturers want to see?
Yeah, firstly is that even if you look at the result, the issue of research and development is very, very key. In this country, we've not been paying serious attention in that regard. You understand? In civilized climes, R&D is a serious component of development. And if you don't involve that, then you are joking. So the first recommendation is that serious attention should be paid to that side. Even manufacturers should also pay attention to it. It helps them to plan, to look into the future, and know how to do things.
How do a small, medium enterprise now do R&D, research and development, when I'm still looking for a way to be afloat? Yes, isn't it?
Again, you see, for us, I think two issues are critical. So one, there needs to be a tightening or a coordination between monetary and fiscal policy. So CBN is doing a lot on one hand, 9.9 billion between February and now, almost $10 billion into the
FX markets, yeah.
So, I mean, that's huge. That's on the monetary side. But there needs to be fiscal backup, and it needs to be coordinated. That needs to happen to be able to further take down the
FX rate.
So that manufacturers are able to easily access, dollar. Secondly, there are value chain constraints. I think one of the major highlights, or one of the major, if you will, benefits that have come out of this recession is the fact that from this survey, we asked the manufacturers, so how have you been surviving? And just as he said, innovation. Many manufacturers are now beginning to think out of the box, to begin to get more creative on one, how they make their products, and two, the sourcing of raw materials. So in this regard, if government can help with these value chain issues, how can we backward integrate to start producing and having some of those raw materials that are coming from, say, Thailand or coming from China or coming from, and start having them manufactured in Nigeria. That way, the foreign exchange that should have been going to these countries will remain in the country.
All right. At this point, let's quickly take another break. And when we come back, it will be time for us to wrap up the show. Of course, we'll continue with the recommendations, the solutions to government, to manufacturers, and even to us as individuals, so to speak. So we'll be right back.
Hey, the clock is ticking. Within every passing minute lies your opportunity to upgrade your life. Don't let these opportunities pass you by. It is your time to upgrade with Western Lotto. Log on to westernlotto.com and play your way to fortune. Simply pick your numbers and you are on your way to winning a 15 million naira jackpot. When you match two numbers, you start winning. Western Lotto. It's your time. Play! Baba says so.
All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's almost the end of the show. But just before we draw the curtains for today, we were talking about recommendations to government, manufacturers, and even to us as individuals, how to get the manufacturing sector, perhaps to start crawling, because it's just there now, isn't it? It's just inactive, as it were, let alone running. All right, and my guests are still here. So, Dr. Ihua, you were talking about recommendation. You talked about coordination of fiscal and monetary policy, and also strengthening the local value chain. What else do we need to see?
I think infrastructure is also a major one. Was it last week we were reading that the president had, instructed the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Transport, to connect all the states in the country by rail. For me, it was surprising. Does the president have to inform him to do that? It's no brainer. You should know that
that's what
the entire country should be connected via
either roads, rail, and everywhere.
The rail can serve as a viable means of transporting raw materials and also transporting finished products. So if we can, tie that aspect up, then of course the roads also. The roads are in pretty bad shape at the moment. Worsened by the rains.
Yes.
Worsened by the rains. If the roads attention can be given, sometimes you now even wonder, what is FEMA doing? Is FEMA still existing? Because you travel, when we go to the field via road most of the time. And a journey that should take you, 2-3 hours begins to take you 6-7 hours, and you wonder. If that's for individuals, then
and
what
those
would
were
the
agencies that
manufacturers
were
say?
created as a failure of the ministry, so to speak.
You know,
Because if Ministry of Works is working, I don't know why there should be a creation of FEMA
and the rest of them.
and the rest of them, you know.
There are
Traffic
so many
police
of
is
them.
not working, you create federal road safety and all of
then
that.
you have you know, cases of manufacturers moving their goods or moving raw materials to their factory, and they are stopped over 50
times.
Yeah.
by the police, by customs, by various people. These bottlenecks are stifling the business environment.
Okay.
Also, the issue of quality and standards is very, very important, especially to the manufacturers. So we talked about diversification of the economy. If we are to export Nigerian-made products to the international market, they must comply with set standards. And luckily in Nigeria, UNIDO have started a program about 3-4 years back called National Quality Infrastructure. And they've really gone very far in that. So that instead of some of our manufacturers going outside to test or even comply with certain set quality standards, you have laboratories here that can do that. And if we follow that very strictly, then Nigerian products can compete in terms of quality. In terms of quality, can compete with products from other
But with
parts
all
of the
those
world.
challenges, can Nigerian products be competitive? That's another thing.
Yeah, a product being competitive is a subject of many factors. Many factors. Even if you comply with set standard, we've talked about power, infrastructure. If you spend so much,
Access to capital.
access to capital, if you spend so much to provide your own power, getting money is a huge problem because of huge interest rates, then you can't be competitive. At the end of the day, you put all those on the cost of the product.
Customer, yeah.
So that will make you not to be competitive. So it's a factor of a lot of issues which have to be put into consideration.
Okay, let's just take a few comments coming through. John Isemede is saying we lack R&D, that's research and development, because there are no linkages in the bus chain, no link between technical colleges, universities, and the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. CBN runs an import base. How do we import using 367 naira to the US dollar? That's the exchange rate. All right, still talking about the comments. Femi Taiwo says government needs to act on the findings of the NOI polls. Now, that brings me to the question. These polls and some of the polls, have you been engaging government? Has government actually sought for that engagement with you, being like a private player in the polling business, to say, because just like I've always said it on this show, that without data you cannot plan.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Without the right policy, without right data, you can't have right policy. So if government says we want to bring out so many Nigerians out of poverty, let's even know how many we have first. You know, how many of us are employed? So have you been having constant engagement with government?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here on a platform like this, really, because and we engage partners like NASME, LCCI, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, because they are the advocates. Our job as researchers, as pollsters, to conduct these surveys, bring out this information to help the advocates run with this data. I mean, with every report we bring out, we'll send it to all relevant organizations, the ministry.
Do they give you a feedback?
The ministry. We
Do
often
they write?
get,
Okay.
some instances
Doc,
we get, yes.
Sorry, let me intervene here. We did one few years back. That was 2013
yes.
on MITO, multi-year tariff order, when Dr. Sam Amadi was the
NEC chief.
Exactly. Yeah. It was very marvelous. I Post did that job for us around the country. And the information they came out with was marveling. At the presentation of the report, the chairman of NRC was there, physical, and he really appreciated it. He said, look, people talk so much, but he believes in evidence-based advocacy. And he took it up from there. And right that time, he made some changes. Okay. Based on what the information that was.
So it's necessary for us to have data, not just data, the right data, and engagement with those people that are even bringing out the data, or even those of us that churn out the data. Because in my own little corner, you see people coming to me for different things, telling me different challenges and all of that. So there should be need for a constant engagement, isn't it? Just as we close, we have just a minute to end the show. What are your parting shots? Is there still light at the end of the tunnel? Can we see the rainbow after the storm? I'll start with you.
Yeah, Nancy, I'm an incurable optimist when it comes to issues concerning Nigeria. All we need to do is to put our acts together. This country is blessed. All we need to do is all those areas that are not good, correct them and put them in order.
And
Nigeria
it's taking us time to correct them. Since I've been born, I don't know before I was born, but since I've been born till now, at least I've been doing a business show now for close to 11 years. I've been talking of these same things. In fact, some people will say, Nancy, are you not tired of talking? How can I be tired of talking? I keep on saying till things get better. Dr. Ihua.
It will get better.
Okay, well, for me, it just links to what he says. And it's one question we asked the manufacturers. What do you expect to see in the next 1 year? Just as he said, the Nigerian manufacturer is incredibly positive. So at least 78% say we expect to see an improvement. We expect to see demand pick up. We expect to see, the foreign exchange crisis addressed to a reasonable level where things can get better. So from my own passing shot really is to the government. When you look at the issues or the factors we've highlighted here, a lot of them are macro issues that have to do with public sector reform. If those can be addressed, then we may have a positive future for the manufacturing sector in the country.
All right, let's leave it at that, gentlemen. Ibrahim Usman says on Twitter, the roads are getting worse every day. Example, the Abuja-Kano road. I guess the government is listening, so they should do what is intended of them. But many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Dr. Bell Ihua, who is the chief exec at NOI Polls, as well as Eke Ubiji, who is the Ubiji, who is the executive secretary at NASME. That's Association for Small Medium Enterprises. So if you want to be there, find him out. Go seek him out. And we've been talking about the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. Of course, the 2017 manufacturing survey conducted by NOI Polls and CC. Many thanks for tweeting. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be here same time tomorrow on this channel, God willing, with another topic. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Bye now.